Our guest today is Ralph Lean, Senior Legal Counsel to the prestigious Toronto law firm of Gallings. Welcome, Ralph, to the Ryerson Negotiation Project.
Thank you, David.
Mr. Lean is a lawyer by profession. He has counseled some of the biggest and most interesting organizations in the country. The National Post has referred to our guest as one of Canada's most influential business people. He has one of the most extensive networks of contacts across the country. Our guest has served on a variety of public and private companies, as well as charities and foundations and civic groups, including, for instance, Score Digital, Right to Play Foundation, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan Board, World Film Festival of Toronto, Molson Indy, and the Exhibition Place Board of Governors. In addition, Mr. Lean is a distinguished visiting professor at Ryerson University, where he's involved in several different courses and a number of different lectures. Well, Ralph, I appreciate you joining us today, and I was hoping that you could share with the viewing audience, because of your variety of extensive experience, what sort of preparation that you would put in place as you prepare for negotiations?
Well, preparation is probably the most important thing. People take it for granted, and I commend you having a course on negotiation. I was telling you earlier, I went to business school, the Western Business School, before people watching were born. I went to law school, Osgoode Hall Law School. There was never a course on negotiation. So anything I've learned from looking and watching people. So this is really good. So preparation is really, really important. Both you've got to understand the facts and the issues you're going to be talking about, but also due diligence on who's on the other side of the table, the lawyer, the client. I know everything about them before I go in, and good negotiators on the other side probably know everything about me and my client as well. So preparation, really important.
When we talk about preparation, where would your concession strategy? I mean, when I ask that question of most members of the bar, the legal bar, they say, well, no, we don't think about concessions. You know, we have a position and we have certain rights and certain legal precedents that substantiate our claim. But in reality, sometimes you have to make concessions as you negotiate a particular item. Has that ever been a part of your preparation as you think of a concession strategy going forward?
No. When I even read the question, I said, well, that's a dumb question. I don't have a concession strategy. I think as you go through your negotiations and you see you're not winning on some issues, that they're just not giving, you and your client will get in the room and say, you know what, we got to move. We wanted to get to here. If we want to do the deal, we'll reduce it. But I don't go in before thinking of that. I don't like the word concession. That's something.
It's just a bad word, isn't it?
It's a bad word.
Bad word.
Listen, bad word. I mean, I come from the political world like you do, and I don't like to concede ever. I want to beat you every time, Dingwall.
Now, relationships. You have been a man for most of your adult life who has developed significant contacts across the country, political, legal, business, charities, etc. Tell us about the importance, or is there importance to relationships, and how do you work them?
Well, relationships generally, when I teach, and I like the courses I teach at Ryerson because I do the interviewing. I don't have to be interviewed, so I like my courses. I do the interviewing. But relationships, I teach the students the importance of networking, getting involved, getting to know people. Woody Allen had an expression, 90% of success is showing up. So you got to meet people. So I've developed relationships. I mean, I just did an interview with one of the newspapers when I changed law firms, and they said, you are reputed to have the largest Rolodex. You actually have a Rolodex? And I used to, but now what I have is a disc, something that my secretary has or assistant has, but I also had on my desk the actual papers. And they said, well, how many names on it? I said, I don't know, but I'm a pretty smart guy, so I looked at the number of pages times the number of names on each page. There were 4,500 names on this thing that are people that I have know and come across with. So relationships are really important. It can, as you're negotiating a deal, help you if you have a relationship with people on the other side, because it can build trust in a negotiation that, you know, your body of work indicates that you're a fair negotiator. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. But relationships generally, and I've got them in business, the charitable world, politics. I mean, you and I are from different political parties, but we're friends. And so relationships are really important.
How do you work your relationships?
It's hard. I mean, and you stay on top of things. I'm in contact with them. You know, I'm out at events, whatever. And so I know what my clients' relationships are doing. I stay in touch with them, stay on top of what they're doing. If there's been good news or bad news, I pick up the phone, call them. So it's important. It's just something you do, and I do it. I'm on the phone and returning people's calls 24/7. In the age of BlackBerry or iPhone or these ridiculous things I now have to use, I'm emailing people, I'm texting people, and I teach my students the importance of returning people's calls, which is something you and I always do, returning people's emails and texts. The younger generation don't respond the way I do and you do. I mean, it's a sign of respect. You know, showing up on time to a meeting is a sign of respect. I was early, you know, and it's something I've always done, just a sign of respect for the people you're doing. And it's something that, it's just common sense, but you know, a lot of people don't.
Have you ever had any incidents where, in terms of your networking, where it's really paid off in terms of staying in touch with people? And
Sure, that's how I built my law practice. There's a lot of competition in big law firms to get retained. So if you've got a relationship and you've stayed on top of it and you've paid attention and you've genuinely shown interest in the client, I'm going to get the file, because the major law firms are all the same. They're all really, really good with expertise. So if you've got a personal relationship, it gives you an edge. So to me, it's really important. It's the most important thing in my career.
I found that a lot of people, not only students and young people, but young people starting out of their careers, they look at the relationships, well, if it happens, it happens, as opposed to really working on building their network and being genuinely concerned about the other individual as you move forward. I use an old saying that cameo appearances get cameo results. And I think relationships, and I agree with you, are pretty important, not only for negotiations, but in other aspects of
100% agree. Really, really important.
Tell us about your communication style. What kind of a communication style would you describe yourself as, Ralph Lean, in negotiations, in business, in law?
Well, I try. Communications is really important. And again, I go back to what I teach these students. Both written and verbal communications, to me, are important, because in the class, they get marked by the questions they ask. So I said, I want to see these well-researched questions, and don't want to see bad English. You're writing something down, or the papers you write to me, it better be perfect. So written communication is important. Verbal communication is really, really important. You're going out for a job interview. You got two equal candidates with terrific resumes. If you can't communicate properly, then it's a problem. So communication has always been important to me. My communication style is very direct. My verbal communication and negotiation, people see what they get. That's the way I communicate. Written communication, interesting on deals, has changed. I've watched, in the age of technology, an email can screw a deal. If I say to you, David, I disagree, you're asking for too much, the price is too high, whatever, that's one thing. We'll cross the table, we'll figure it out. If I word it such that price is absolutely ridiculous, in a crisp email, some guy says, I'm leaving, negotiations are over. So you have to be careful with today's age of email communications, almost blowing a deal. And it's just something that 20 years ago, you and I were doing it, that wouldn't happen. Today, it's really important. So communication is important.
Do you do a lot of emails in terms of following up in your negotiations? And
No, because I'm not terribly computer literate, so it becomes very difficult to do much more than yes, no. I do if I'll dictate it to my assistant, but the younger generation is this with their emails and texts and things like that. English isn't always perfect when they're banging them through, and So I don't do a lot of it just because I'm old and incapable.
Tell us about how you develop or how you get your mandate. For instance, you're representing a corporation for the purposes of a major lease. How do you get your mandate? What sort of detail do you want from your client in terms of the mandate that you need to proceed?
Well, I get it because of the relationships I've developed. People have confidence. I think they hire me and the team I'm with because they have confidence in my judgment. You know, not because I'm a better lawyer than the guy, that they have confidence in my judgment, confidence that I will choose the right team to service their needs, that I'll be there throughout, that I'll watch the fees. Clients are very fee sensitive these days, and so I monitor how much they're going to pay, whatever. So it comes from you know, years of relationship. Obviously, having success and doing things for people, you get referrals. So,
but if you were a young person and you were asked to go and negotiate, whether it's a contract with Microsoft or Bell, is it better to get a written mandate from your superior? Is it better to sit down with your superior and get an oral mandate, or is it a combination of both?
You talking the superior or the client who's walking in the door?
The client.
Client walks in the door. We usually get a retainer. There's a standard retainer that the Law Society likes us to have, and you know, probably should have, but it's usually not something that's discussed. They come in and say, we want to buy this company. You know, if you've got the manpower, show us your expertise and the team you're going to get it. Now they're saying, give us an estimate, how much it's going to cost to go there. You're also now in getting mandates. They have these ridiculous things called RFPs, request for proposal. You never used to have to do it. Now you got to do RFPs and win it based upon all kinds of criteria. Yeah, you generally always will get a written retainer, but it's pretty standard terms.
Have you ever been involved in multi-party negotiations?
Yeah, all the time, all the time.
Any certain protocols that you follow in relation to these multi-party?
They're different because
so many stakeholders at the table.
Different stakeholders at the table with different interests. Sometimes you're allied with one, sometimes you're not. So you have to feel the room, feel the people, establish present relationships, and hope you've had past relationships, whatever. So it's different dynamic in the room.
Any stories you care to share with us about some of these multi-party negotiations you've been involved with?
You know what? Nothing jumps to mind in the multi-party. Maybe later on I'll wake up, because I'm old here. It's 9 in the morning here. You want me to remember something 20 years ago? I just, what happened yesterday? But no, nothing jumps to mind with that.
So you have a team. You're getting ready for negotiations. Is there certain protocols, certain ground rules that you have for your team as you enter negotiations? For instance, when you were heavily involved with the World Film Festival, or the Molson Indy, or the basketball, were there certain ground rules that you and your team put together in terms of proceeding with your negotiations?
Yeah, but they're all different. I mean, because there'll be different issues. So
share with us.
Well, the Raptors was a good example. And one of the best negotiators I saw was young John Bitov Jr., who was 32 years old, president of the group that won the right to bring the Raptors to Toronto. And he headed the team, and he's 32 years old. And he brought in the Slate family as partners, Bank of Nova Scotia. David Peterson, my former law partner, was chairman of the group. But Bitov, I watched in a really interesting negotiation. You may not remember this. We were building Air Canada Centre. And at the same time, Steve Stavro and Larry Tannenbaum, Maple Leaf Sports, were also going to build a new arena. At one time, there was going to be two 20,000-seat arenas 500 yards apart down by Union Station. Like, unbelievable, mind-boggling. any event, people came to their senses, and Bitov had to negotiate with the City of Toronto the building of Air Canada Centre and how much money the city was going to put in for roads and transit and upgrading Union Station, and how much the private sector was. And Bitov was negotiating with the chief of staff of the mayor of the day, George Smitherman, who ultimately became a provincial cabinet minister and ran for mayor. I actually chaired his fundraising, his campaign, and we ended up losing at 802 by 15 points, but a good candidate. But I watched the negotiations in those two, and actually, example of good negotiations, Smitherman on behalf of the city and the taxpayer saying, you're the private sector, you pay for it. Bitov, representing his shareholders, trying to get the government to pay for as much as you can, and they came to a solution. But young Bitov, he was 32 years old, negotiating with much older people was spectacular. Smart young guy.
And the end result was there was two facilities?
No, one facility built by the Raptors, and ultimately Maple Leaf Sports bought out. Bitov and Slade ended up with a shotgun. Slade had it. He ultimately sold his asset, the Raptors, to Maple Leaf Sports. And I was involved as well at the time on the board of teachers, pension plan that owned control of the hockey and then basketball team.
Good, good. Share with us issues around trust. Obviously, your clients trust you, and obviously the persons on the other side have come to trust you. But what are some of the ways in which you develop trust? Because it's not an easy thing.
Well, I think trust comes from your body of work over time. People talk. You've got a reputation of someone that is a fair dealer, someone that isn't a fair dealer, someone that says, okay, when I make a commitment, I'm going to live up to that commitment. So you got to have trust on your own side. Your client's got to trust you to represent his interests, but when you're negotiating with the other side and lawyers on the other side, and legal agreements are very complex. They're not standard form, and the client doesn't understand it, but you've got a job to protect their interest and negotiate with the guy on the other side who's protecting his client's interest with the reps and warranties and commitments that you say you're going to do in the agreement. So you've got to have some trust with the lawyer on the other side that you're going to deal fairly. You're not going to exhibit any kind of sharp practice and, we'll sneak this clause in, whatever.
Has that ever happened to you? Where people have attempted to put
Yeah.
clauses in?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do in that kind of situation?
Well, it depends when it comes up. Usually, you point it out to them in a nice way that it was accidental, because you're going to have to deal with them across the table. I don't want to call, if you're a hot-tempered person, which I am sometimes, you might bang the table and do something, but it's the wrong way to go, because at the end of the day, there's going to be other issues. So you try to slough it off and say, oh, I guess it got in accidentally. So you just have to make sure you and your team read everything.
Good. When you enter a negotiation, tell us about the agenda. Who develops the agenda?
That's like the concession speech. You're saying question
You don't have
there.
an agenda?
You know what? Not necessarily written. I mean, you and your client get together. We know the parameters. We know where we want to get to, but we don't. Many times in very formal negotiation, the lawyer on the other side or your team submits to the other side, these are the issues we're going to talk about. But it's usually done by the junior lawyers as part of the team. I don't generally, I'm kind of a bigger picture as to where do we want to get to.
But see, you've developed over the years a judgment, instincts
Yes.
in terms of what should
Right.
be or shouldn't be on a particular
Right.
agenda.
Right.
But I have found in my own negotiations that it's, particularly if you don't know the other side, it's always wise to have an agenda.
But your style was agendas. When we ran a sports conference, when we were advisors to these young students who were running a spectacular sports conference, you and I were faculty advisors. You came in every meeting with an agenda and ran the meetings crisply. You were terrific. I'd hire you, Dingwall, because you're an agenda man. I was no good at it, but it worked for you. It's just not my style to be an agenda person. Now, the people that work with me are a lot more detail-oriented and probably do. Just not me.
So your approach has been the big picture.
Yeah.
And others would do
Yeah.
the sort of detail. Tell us about your experience with the media. What would you advise younger people, whether they're in law or not in law, in terms of dealing with the media?
Try not to. I mean, it's the media is very, very difficult. I'm not very good at dealing with the media. I don't generally have to deal with the media. On a big deal with a big client, you've got specialists. You know, you've got PR departments either inside your company or outside your company. When you've got, if you're a publicly traded company, your securities lawyers working the media people have real rules of what you can and can't say. But I've had to deal over the years with the media, a lot having to do with various political campaigns I've been involved in. And in the political campaigns, I'm a fundraiser. I'm a political fundraiser, so I don't get involved in generally having to deal with the media or the issues. I mean, fundraisers, political fundraisers are treated really funny. We're really important. You can't run a campaign unless you get the money. And the people running the campaign, you got great access, they'll call you back, but they have no interest in what you say. This guy just raises the money. So I don't think I deal with the media. Media is really important. It's not a specialty that I've had. I haven't had any training.
But when you're doing deals, say for instance on the Raptors and representing them, has the client ever said, look, I don't want to deal with the media, would you do it?
No, most of my clients would rather deal with it than have me deal with it. So I haven't had them come to me, and I'm happy not to deal with the media. I mean, you're a pro. You've been in politics. You've lived it. Media is difficult. They're looking for a story, and unless you're professional, you got to wonder what you say. They got a microphone in your face. I mean, I've talked to political leaders, friends of mine, who run political campaigns for 37 days. And they say it's the biggest pressure because everywhere you go, there's a microphone in your face and new issues come up. You're thinking on your feet. Depending on how you put it, you can blow a campaign. Remember Kim Campbell said something like, elections are not times to talk about policy. You know what? She's right. She's right. These are detailed things here, but that little thing hurt her. So dealing with the media can be disastrous.